Good afternoon, Andy. With a slightly delayed chat this week with one thing and another, but everything been all right for you?
Yeah, cool, Tom. Just as bored as I was last week, trying to find things to do and just end up searching the internet for things that I can't afford and perhaps shouldn't be thinking about buying when things are so much in the air in terms of the economy and how things are going. But we haven't got a classic car summer, have we? So it's about I'm kind of thinking about where I'm going to be next spring in terms of what I've got or what I would like to have, and trying to make a bit of a fast buck. So, yeah. So, where are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, well, the classifieds is certainly a bit of the paper that I've been deliberately throwing away before I get to it for that very reason, because you get tempted by things, don't you? So the only thing I've done is I've ripped out that tiny little bit for some doors for the ZA.
Oh, all right, cool.
One's in good condition, but condition spelt wrongly. It's spelled
What was that saying?
CONDISHION, is in good condition. So I just need to decide whether or not that's worth pursuing or whether to just leave them as they are for now. So that's been the only bit of classifieds I've been looking at.
Is that all because of the spelling that you're going to leave it? Is that the reason why?
It's definitely one of the reasons.
Right.
Yeah, another one is as well is I don't particularly want to drive all the way to Northamptonshire to look at some doors which might not be in as good condition, regardless of
Yeah,
the spelling as it claims. So I'm thinking about that one.
yeah.
But in terms of looking
Mhm.
at cars, I'm deliberately not even looking because, like you said yourself, we don't know where we're going to be in a few months' time, and it's really not the time, even though it's very tempting.
So on your ZA doors, are they so bad that you think you're going to need some donor doors? Are they not
Possibly,
sustainable?
we're going to do some temporary repairs, but to actually repair them properly could go into thousands, which for doors
Yeah.
obviously is something you don't want to be thinking about too much. So again, it's just seeing how good a bodge can do, or whether or not you do need to get new doors. But obviously with ZAs and ZBs, etc., doors are not the easiest thing to come by as well. So when an opportunity
I bet.
comes up to get them, you wondered, should I take it? Should I not? So it's one of those, and I'm mulling over at the
How
moment.
much, how much are they, if you don't mind me asking?
£185 or near offer. So
100 quid.
100 quid, yeah. But that's the thing, you just don't know what you're going to be confronted with when you get there as well. So it's one of those, do you get them just because they're there, or do you? And then if they're not suitable, can you get rid of them as well? Because I can't imagine that many people are doing up Z types.
Yeah, I've got a garage full of doors at the moment. I've got two sets of doors for my Iltis, and um, yeah, the problem is storing this stuff. If you don't
Yeah,
need them, yeah, you can sell them on with the car when you're going to sell the car on. I know you're not going to sell yours on, but with mine, you could always go as with the vehicle. But yeah, I mean, the car when I got this Iltis, the came with boxes of stuff, brand new clutch from Volkswagen, all in sort of the grease-proof kind of paper, that kind of that tissue paper with oil on it and stuff, all that kind of stuff, all in the box with the VAG all over it. Carburetor, I think there is in there as well. It's nice to have that stuff, but you end up selling with the car in 5 years' time. So the stuff that goes wrong is always the stuff which you don't expect.
yeah.
So
I love that
touch
on
wood.
that separate note as well. I love it when you get the stuff in the cardboard boxes with the paper wrapped around it. And some companies, I know SU have done it with the fuel pumps, just to make it feel just that little bit more vintage or a bit more authentic when you buy new parts. And I do think it's a nice touch.
There's so much. A lot of that stuff just, to be honest, you don't really see it anymore, especially at car shows. If you go to car shows, it's a lot of stuff which is very generic stuff.
Yeah,
You tend not to see that really special stuff that's just come off a garage shelf or a dealership shelf that's closed down or something like that. That tends to have gone now. There's a lot of that gone. Um, and if you own a German car, to be honest, if you go to a classic car show, you tend to see a lot of British stuff there. So you can buy, tie rod ends or distributors and everything you can think of for British cars. But if it's anything German you're looking for, you've had it. So you tend to be scouring through, for example, for lenses, light lenses. You're scouring through boxes of stuff, and it's all Lucas, you never find anything Heller or Bosch or anything that is kind of something going to go on your classic German car or even French car. French, sort of French stuff is be difficult as well. But yeah, but it's always a bit of a one of those. It's like flogging a dead horse is what I was going to say. If you're going through an auto jumble in this country, although to be honest, I've not been to Bewley. Have you been to Bewley auto jumble?
I've not actually. No. On the subject as well of auto jumbles, I think a couple have been allowed to reopen. I am going to look into this, so we'll have more on this next week.
In the northwest, there's one at near Southport. At the is it Tarleton? There's one over there at Leisure Lakes that started last year. I was trying to start one actually in Rainford and there was one that was up in North Lancashire that used to be near Garstang. Do you know that one?
No, I don't, to be honest with you, but the Rainford one sounds like something if we could get that off the ground.
It closed down. A lot of the traders needed somewhere to go, so I found a place that was willing to have it in Rainford, within easy reach of the M6, the A580 and all that kind of stuff, and Manchester and Liverpool really close. But unfortunately, I think a lot of it has gone to Southport, so I couldn't get in touch with the guy. So I think it's now at Southport, which is a bit off the beaten track. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if that one starts up. But
yeah, so these two I've got at the minute are Rougheth, and there's one in that's in Yorkshire, and there's one in Essex as well, which obviously is a bit far for us. But I'm going to give those a ring and find out what the crack is.
You'd never give it a second thought normally, would you? I mean, I started looking at spotlights for some reason, and again, Heller and Bosch, the kind of things I look for. But I don't really need them, but I've got space for them, and I'm thinking, do I buy some? And I don't know. I just maybe it becomes that thing which you do when you're bored. But another thing which I've been doing is trying to look for something to flip as a vehicle. Probably thinking ahead, maybe something. I'm thinking almost spring of next year in terms of where I'm going to be at, and I'm thinking about maybe buying something which could see me through the end of the summer and into autumn, into the beginning of next year, something I can use and then sell again next spring. So I'll be looking at sports cars, not necessarily classic, but more modern classic, and I've been looking at trying to see if there's anything cheap in terms of classic cars that you could buy. In terms of sports cars, the obvious choice is the MX-5. And I've been looking at. I always fancied the Mark 1, and then somebody said that the Mark 1 was really a bit unrefined compared to the others. And actually, the Mark 2 and the 2.5 were kind of the ones to go for. You can pick up a Mark 3 Mazda MX-5 for about, I've seen them for about as low as £2,000, 2.2, 2.5, for an early one, which is 2006. But they're a completely different car to the Mark 2 and Mark 2.5. And so the issue, of course, with those is rust on the structural rust in the engine bay. Is it the chassis legs at the front?
Yeah.
And obviously the sills and all that kind of stuff on those as well, same as the Mark 1s. So that kind of puts me off a little bit.
But on the flip side, on the flip side of that though as well is you do know that the running gear, the engines, everything like that, they're relatively bomb-proof as well. So while you've got it's pros and cons like you get with anything, but at least some of it, is going to be quite steady.
Yeah, and also the 1.6s are cheaper than 1.8s because everybody wants the 1.8, but the 1.6 are decent enough. I mean, they're probably not got a wheel spin very much, but yeah, this seemed like still like a good buy, even though they've come up a little bit in price the last couple of years. And of course, you can get everything for them. But the thing is, if you're going to flip something like that, you've lost. Unless you can buy something for 1,500 quid, you're not going to make much on an MX-5. If you're going to buy one, use it. There's not a lot to improve on it.
There's not really.
The only way I would improve on something like that is maybe take stuff away, because a lot of them are being modded a little bit. So I might take off some of the bling, get the hood repaired, or just patch things up. But I don't want to be doing wheel arches or anything that's too complicated.
Yeah, on that front, they suffer a little bit in the same ways that minis used to suffer back when they used to be cheap. Whereas they just get modded and personalised to the point where it's very hard to put it back, and it's a little bit of that problem.
But that's on my list as well. Actually, I a bit of a crazy idea for a Mini. I mean, I've had a couple of Minis. I had a Mini Clubman Estate, 1970 Mini Clubman Estate. I had that in the when I first started driving, and even though it was like, at the time I had it, 6 years old, the bottom foot half of the doors at the back of the vehicle, back of the Clubman Estate, were completely rotten. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I had a Mini City, which I had through uni. But I always fancied doing, the Bourne films,
Yeah.
Jason Bourne. I always fancied doing a little Bourne replica Mini. So basically, get those French bumpers that you get, the nudge bars you get front and back on a Mini. Buying a red one. It has to be about 93, 94 spec. And the film car had a fake sunroof on it, so I could do that. The front wing had a massive dent in it, I think was probably painted black. Again, easy to do, but I thought of just doing like a Bourne replica kind of thing with Mini lights on it and everything. Just kind of, it doesn't have to be a really tight, just a solid Mini.
Yeah.
And I reckon you could add 500 quid onto a kind of a decently solid but a bit rough around the edges Mini, just by doing a bit of that to it. But the other things I've been looking at have been things like A35s, which I think you were saying you've seen them for about three and a half. I think I've seen the same.
Hovering around the 3 to 4. Like you said, unless you want a van in there, it seemed to be more desirable. I've seen vans for as much as 12, 13. So I think it just depends.
But a couple of things, you see, the thing that excites me about the A35s, apart from the fact my mum had one and she'd quite like to see one of those again, is obviously they've become quite popular for racing in recent years, for historic racing.
Yeah.
So you just need a couple of leather straps on the front, just need kind of the decal for the racing decal on the side, some mini light wheels on it or something similar, some racing steels of some sort, banded wheels. Just trick it out a little bit, make it look a little bit sporty, and it'll look cool. But like you said, they're vastly underpowered, aren't they? So, but
in a way, that makes it more fun as well. I love watching A35s racing as well, because obviously you've got different specs, but I just imagine it's just a lot more fun to throw something around that isn't going to do it for you, and that certainly fits into that category.
So for about £3,500, you might be able to get something that you could make a little bit more interesting than perhaps the average A35. The one thing that always worries me about those 50s British cars and 60s British cars is that the bodywork always, it's got that rounded nature to it. It's almost like there's built-in bog filler in those designs, because they're all rounded in such a way that it hides filler, or it looks like it's almost built with filler in the first place.
Yeah.
They all look like they've been filled, even if they've not been filled. They all look like they have, because there's no real straight edges on them, and they're probably plastered with paint, and you've no idea what's underneath there, because they're all going to need a massive resto. Some of those cars.
On that point as well, obviously, I'm very familiar with how rounded 50s bodywork throws up some horrible surprises. I've got a very, very short video of a panel on the ZA just being tapped and it falling off because it's basically concrete. Yeah. So I'll put that in and show you just how bad it can be. And like I said, there's no way of knowing unless you break it off.
I've got to pretend I've seen that. That was really good. That was a great video example of a filled door on a. What was that?
It was the front wheel arch on the ZA, and it weighed a ton when it came off as well.
Right. Say I'm useless with filler, so you could probably tell a car I filled if you saw it. It's actually probably, there's quite a lot of skill. It's one of those useful, useless skills that there is out there. If you can do it really well, then great, because it's useful for doing certain cosmetic things with vehicles. But it is really difficult to do well, and I've tried loads of times. It seems to get sticky everywhere, no matter how you apply it. The other cars, just going back to what we were saying, the other things we've been looking at, I wondered about getting a Morris Minor at some point.
Yeah.
And again, the same goes for those, what we said about the A35s. There's a company in Huddersfield that does a nice thing with Morris Minors. They kind of Americanize them quite a bit, because they sold them in America fairly successfully for that size of vehicle. And this company in Huddersfield, they add a peak to the windscreen, so one of those windscreen sun visor peaks, and they do the narrow white wall tires on them. And then I'm trying to think what they do with the wood treatment. They basically make it more like an American woody.
Yeah.
And they look really cool. Now, I'm trying to think, it was Salvage Hunters Classic Cars did a minor Countryman last year, and was it last year, a couple of years ago, the last season they did. I don't think they managed to sell it at all for months, but they did like a basket weave effect on the side of the vehicle in between the wood, in between the wood bit on the panels. And but yeah, I was thinking of doing something like that, kind of making an American spec version of a Morris Minor. And really, the other thing I've come back to is other sports cars. And I was looking at Audi TTs. The Audi TTs are cheap as anything, in the convertible version anyway. The problem I keep getting is that you go to other cars and then everybody says, yeah, the Audi TT was great, but I'd have an MX-5. So then I started looking at Fiat Barchettas, and then Fiat Barchetta owners are saying, it's really great, but I'm selling it because I want an MX-5. My little find, I think, of the week is they built them from 1992, 93, and it's a Honda. And I'm not big into Hondas, but I've had a few JDM K cars, sorry. I've had a couple of Nissan Cubes and things like that. Nissan POW. The Honda CRX from 92, 93 was known as the Del Sol. And basically, they were a two-door Honda Civic kind of base coupe with a Targa top roof that would actually lift out and go in the boot, or it would have an electric platform that comes up and the roof slides into it and then disappears in the back, which you can have problems with. So basically, you've got a Targa roof, you've got obviously the two windows, two-seater with some luggage space. But also the rear window has got like a Targa hoop on them. It's a bit like a Porsche 914 setup, but you've also got that window that goes down behind you as well, which looks really cool to have that.
Does sound very cool.
Front wheel drive. So an MX-5 is a rear wheel drive, and I think the secret with the MX-5 is the rear wheel drive nature of it. And the CRX Del Sol doesn't offer that. The engines are okay on them. There's quite a range of engines on them. And prices are quite strong for those, so they kind of start from for a decent one, for about 2.5 as well. So MX-5s are winning on the rear wheel drive and also sub 2,000 mark if you can get one. So that's another sort of another car that's on my eBay searches. I did look at things like the Rover MGF and have discounted that one completely.
Yeah. So if you mind running through what the reasons are for that.
Well, most people that are into cars kind of know about the MGF, and really just that, well, the variations of that as well. It's all to do with the engine and the head gasket, isn't it?
It's the head gasket, exactly, yeah.
The engine just wasn't up to it. And of course, wasn't a talk of that engine going in the Mini, when the Mini was reborn, with the Stephenson designed Mini of 1999, of 2000, the new Mini, and luckily they built a completely new engine for that vehicle and didn't put the Rover engine in. But yeah, that's the issue really with that.
And they're notoriously difficult to work on as well, so it's just, they're not really worth the faff, really.
No, so that's off the table completely. I think if I was given one, or even paying up to 500 quid, you still walk away anyway, wouldn't you? I mean, I have driven one, and they're okay, but they're not yeah, not exotic enough. I
They
think
don't
the
blow your socks
MX-5.
off, do they?
No, I think the MX-5 gives you something to sort of. I think it's just the weight of the MX-5. I think they've got it right in terms of how that car works as a sports car. And I think
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's that open road. It also came down to looking at the Rover Cabriolet, not Rover Cabriolet. What I'm talking about. I did look at those as well, actually. The Mini Cabriolet, and I had a look at those. They are so cheap at the moment. You can buy one of those for like 1,500 quid,
I hadn't realised.
1,300 quid all day long. And some of them actually look quite decent, and they don't seem to have too many issues. Although I've not done that much research into those new minis. I think they do have electrical problems on quite a few of those early minis.
That wouldn't shock me.
So 2004, I think the Rover. Sorry, I keep saying Rover. 2004, the BMW New Mini came out, and as a cabriolet. And I think they still had some of the issues that the R51 Mini had, and the first launch Mini still have those issues with those. And I think the ride on those isn't sporty enough if you're comparing it with anything else. The only bonus on a Mini Cabriolet is you do get 2 seats in the back if you want to squash something into the back, if you needed to at a push. But anybody sat in the back of that, you can't see out the window. Yeah. It must be like being kidnapped. So those Mini Cabriolets, it was just like being kidnapped, because once you're in the back, you might as well have a black bag on your head, because all you've got is just those C-pillar, kind of the hood, basically the top, is just obscuring your view completely. And also,
being in the back of one, actually, it's a really weird experience. Yeah, being in the back, because you sort of you sat upright completely, and then your knees are sort of like in that position because there's nowhere to put them, and you sat like that for the duration of the journey, and it's really not very comfortable at all.
Yeah, if you see anybody actually looking like that, you just that example you've just given physically, they own or they have a friend who owns
puts them in the back.
Cabriolet.
There you go.
Yeah. But I do have a part share in a new Beetle Cabriolet, and they drive all right because they're just obviously Golf 4 platform. So I've experienced of a 2011 new Beetle Cabriolet. But the sensation of those is that you're sat in the middle of the car because of the cab forward design. There's so much space in front of you. It doesn't feel satisfying to drive at all, and you can't be sporty in a new Beetle Cabriolet. In fact, you can't be anything. In fact, you really shouldn't be seen in a new Beetle Cabriolet.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, simple as that. But I think the sportiness is what you've got to have with a cabriolet.
Yeah.
Having said that, I've owned one of the biggest cabriolets you could buy for your money until about 18 months ago. I had a Chrysler Sebring convertible, American market, left-hand drive. This one had a 5-speed manual gearbox, but it also had the 2-litre engine from the PT Cruiser. So it was underpowered, and it was the largest thing you've ever seen. It was like a boat. It was, if you Googled I'm trying to remember the name of it now. It had a code name for it, but it's a 2002 Chrysler Sebring convertible, and really comfy. It was a big American thing, the last of the big American cars, and it fell to bits. Everything fell off in your hand, but it was interesting. But it was very cheap.
Yeah,
and not sporty, not sporty at all. So, so that was the weirdest thing I've ever owned in terms of that. So I've been there. I wanted a small, compact, 2-seater sports car, rear-wheel drive. So MX-5 is definitely on the shopping list. Probably the 2.5. So the Mark 2.5, which is the second sort of update of the Mark II. What are your thoughts? Have you got any thoughts on any of those that I mentioned?
I think, like you said, you want the rear-wheel drive, you want the sporty feel, you want the price. You're going to have to go down the MX-5 route, really, and then just settle for something that is as rust-free as you can maybe get it.
Could I make money on an MX-5, do you think?
It's difficult to say. It,
No.
it depends where we are next spring, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think the thing is, you're not going to lose money. A lot of these modern classics, you're not going to lose money at the moment on stuff like that. If you buy something at a reasonable price and you do your homework and you know what you're buying, I suppose, you shouldn't lose anything on something like that. Particularly when the parts for those things are quite plentiful. I mean, if you bought a Fiat Barchetta, then you're probably going to be struggling for little bits of trim and things. I mean, the engine and running gear is all Fiat Punto, I think, isn't it? I noticed Fiat Coupes have actually seem to be reasonable, but I want something open top. But I did come across the Coupes being quite a good buy at the moment. And if you want something like a mini Ferrari, but want something fresh air.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely more fun.
Yeah, but so that's my plan. I can't think about any shows, so I'm thinking about buying something else.
Yeah.
And it's not that I've got loads of money, it's just that I'm getting a bit bored and I'm just kind of thinking I could do with that experience of country roads and just blasting down them. But yeah, I'm not sure the Mark II and the Mark II.5 MX-5, I'm not sure they're classics yet. Are they really?
They will be, though. They will be.
Modern classics.
Yeah.
MX-5, I'd say, the classic, the Mark I.
I think they're just about sneaking,
Yeah. But yeah, the Mark II and 2.5, not quite yet. Right, and so there we have it.
There we have it.
And we'll speak next week.
Hopefully with some MG updates.
I was going to say, I want to see some Magnet ZA action.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm hoping so. Speak next week. Thank you very much.
All right.
Hey,
So long. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.